Is there improvement in braking power with the ventilated discs and bigger discs? Yeah, so the bigger rotor gives a longer lever for the caliper to slow the rotor down. So imagine, a bike wheel spinning. Let's say there's no spokes. If you grab the outside of the wheel, you could stop it very easily. But if you grab the axle and tried to stop it, it would just continue to spin inside your hand because of the amount of torque and the lack of leverage that you'd have over that axle. So the bigger the rotor, the more, it's the same effect as grabbing the outside of the bike tire as opposed to the axle. So we're moving that out about half an inch or so. So an increased lever arm. The bigger rotor has better thermal capacity, even though it's lighter. It can receive that heat and shed it more quickly thanks to the improved cooling. So yeah, this will give better braking. It's not going to be a dramatic difference, but it is a nice upgrade. Brake rotors are consumable items. And so, really doing our upgraded brake rotor set isn't that much more expensive than replacing the stock set. And then in the future, you can just replace the rotor rings.
Yep.
But yeah, the improved cooling will definitely help on track and in times where you're really heating up the brakes.
Yeah, and you'll get a more consistent feel too. The rotor with the floating hat is going to give you a much, less prone to warp under most situations. Any situation really than the factory rotors.
Yeah, the factory rotors will warp on track.
On real hard, hot applications if you get them super toasty.
Yeah, just because it's a one big rigid assembly and it can't expand in a linear fashion.
Yep.
Where this rotor can freely expand and contract radially on the floating hat. The factory rotor is constrained by the factory cast hat. And so what ends up happening is as the rotor expands, it cups because it's being held on one side.
Yeah, and they do lots of cool stuff on those rotors to help prevent that, the shape that it comes up to the hat, but it's still, you've got the single material mass there that you've got very different thermals on one end versus the other.